To the AAJA Nielsen Google Hangout. Thank you so much for joining us. We are here today to with some amazing guests to talk about 2018. It was an exciting year for us, and we'll talk about some of our accomplishments, highlights for the Asian American community, and then we'll look ahead at 2019 and see what it is that we can anticipate and what we could be excited about and support come 2019. So we'll start with a quick introduction, and then we'll jump right into our conversation. My name is Mariko Carpenter, and I am the VP of Strategic Community Alliances at Nielsen. We are the largest consumer research company in the world with 40,000 plus employees, associates in 104 countries. I sit in the diversity and inclusion team, and I serve as a thought leader for Asian American data and insights, and more broadly, multicultural data and insights, because we all know that the face of America is changing. And I'll throw you guys a stat to kick us off. 92% of the population growth in the next 5 years is going to come from minorities. And Asian Americans represent the fastest growing segment. So, and so as a market research company for Nielsen, we probably know better than most that representation matters. So we partner with organizations like AAJA, like Visual Communications, really who are championing Asian American representation. And then, we think that events like this is really, really important for us to come together, support one another across ethnicities, across industries. So I'm really honored to be here today with everyone on this panel. So, let me stop here. I'm going to pass it over to my partner in crime, Michelle. But before I do that, I wanted to say that Michelle and I share a memorable moment from 2018, which was that she and I not only met, but took a picture with Daniel Day Kim. So that was in May of 2018 in DC at the Apex Gala. So so that is my highlight for 2018. Michelle, I'm going to toss it to you.
I can't top that. Hi, thanks everyone. My name is Michelle Yehi Lee. I am the incoming national president of AAJA and the current senior vice president. I'm also a reporter at the Washington Post. I cover money and politics. So clearly I never have anything to write about. Just a little bit about AAJA. And first of all, thank you so much to Nielsen for your partnership and your support. And we're so happy to be here with you. And I'm really glad that we're doing this in a hangout and that it'll be recorded and other people will be able to view it for a long time, even afterward. And because I know that they'll really benefit from our conversation. AAJA is a professional nonprofit that was started in 1981. We are dedicated to increasing diversity in newsrooms and in the news industry, and also making sure that the AAPI community is represented accurately and fairly in news coverage. So a lot of the market research that we have learned and gleaned through Nielsen has been so helpful because we're able to help inform the journalism that our members and partners do, and also help brainstorm story ideas and be able to make sure that our community is covered accurately and fairly, which especially nowadays, it's such an important resource and such an important mission for us to be committed to. So I wanted to start off with quick introductions, just brief introductions with each of the speakers, and then we can get started because we have so many questions that we want to cover. Why don't we start with Andrew?
Great. I'll keep mine really brief. So I'm Andrew. I'm one of the co-founders of a company called Boba Guys. Some people know us for mainly our stores called Boba Guys, but we also have a tea company called Tea People, and now a boba. We make the tapioca in the United States, which is, I think, we're the first to ever do that in Hayward, California, the great city of Hayward, California. And we do a lot of stuff with the community. I think a lot of people know that we're pretty involved in politics and entertainment and supporting anything related to representation, anything related to minorities, really. So yeah, when we get to talk about 2018, this is probably the year in which everything that we're doing just kind of all culminated into this huge movement. So we're pretty excited.
And Andrew, where are you today?
I'm back in San Francisco, but I'll be back in LA. We're just opened our next LA store today, actually. So we're about 15 stores, and I don't think I have to explain what boba is, but if you guys don't know, if you're watching, boba is that tapioca drink with the balls in it. And we opened our 15th one just today.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that's why Ben couldn't join. Ben, my co-founder, is there right now. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
How about we'll go to Telly next.
Okay, I'm Telly Wong. I'm the Senior Vice President and Chief Content Officer at IW Group, which is a multicultural marketing agency. And we work with a number of clients and develop Asian American marketing campaigns and programs for them. Most notably and most recently, we oversaw and developed the Asian American marketing campaign for a film called Crazy Rich Asians, which some of you might have heard about. And we also work with McDonald's, Lexus, HBO, and some other wonderful clients.
Crazy Rich Asians. Yeah, we've heard something about that. Francis.
Hi, everybody. My name is Francis. I'm coming right now from the Cultural Eco District of Little Tokyo here in downtown Los Angeles. I'm your Executive Director of Visual Communications. Our mission is to develop and support the voices of Asian American and Pacific Islander filmmakers and media artists who empower communities and challenge perspectives. We've been around for 48 years, turning 50 in a couple. Our largest program that we're known for is the annual LA Asian Pacific Film Festival. So, everybody.
Hello.
Hi. And Congresswoman Meng will be joining us shortly, but why don't we get started, because we have so much to talk about. First of all, we wanted to really capture this, what 2018 looked like, because surely a lot of things happened. And Francis, why don't we start with you? Visual Communications has been doing such great work championing for API voices and stories to be told for so many decades. And as you were talking about your work, I really resonated because AAJ's mission aligns so well with what you're doing. And you yourself have been with Visual Communications for quite some time. So you have a lot of, you're taking the pulse of really what the community is and being represented in the entertainment. So from your perspective, what was the biggest highlight of 2018?
Of course, Crazy Rich Asians was the highlight, and I think what was coined as Asian August, right? And you know, that month started with Jennifer Yu Nelson's The Darkest Mind. On Netflix, we had To All the Boys That I Loved Before. And, you know, that was adapted from Jenny Han's book. And on top of that, we had Anish Chaganti's Searching as well that came out. This is all in August, and I think there's a few more things that I'm not mentioning here. But 2018, we had a lot of success here that I don't think anybody you know, I can see it more, you know, there's more success there. I mean, I think in the documentary slate as well, we had Bing Liu's Minding the Gap and Stephen Meng's Crime and Punishment. That's out in Hulu right now. PJ Raval's Color Ganda is a winner around the festival circuit too. And, you know, we had Sandy Tan's Shirkers, Ali Porter's Ulan, which is a Filipino food documentary. So in terms of a lot of the independent filmmaking on our side, it was a really, really big year. You also looked at into TV, continued success of Fresh Off the Boat, even shows like Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and Kim's Convenience, right? And a lot of other shows. These are sort of multiple highlights throughout the year. And it's been a good year, and hopefully, and it's going to continue in 2019, definitely.
And Francis, like you just mentioned, like all these great projects. You know, some of them I don't even recognize. But really, that's a huge, a big list for just one year, right? What do you think what contributed to the success of all these projects, and why did it all happen at once, you think, from your perspective, especially in the independent film part?
Well, a lot of the things in 2018, I think we can look at as a year that took momentum from previous years. 2017, we had Taika Waititi's Thor, Justin Chan's Goop, Kogonada's Columbus, The Big Sick. And so I do want to mention all these were men, so there's a lot of things to do, and 2017 will be done. But 2018, we just really a lot of productions that came into fruition that's been in the works of the previous years. You can also say it's a combination of Asian Americans going into the mainstream, but also this movement of mainstream going diverse. And coming from our studio corporate side of things, it's recognizing really what you mentioned, Mariko, earlier, was sort of, this minority that's going to become Asian American minority that's going to be a majority. But, I call us right now the rising majority. And that's reflected in the spending power that we have. Distribution giants as Netflix and Hulu is also playing a big game in amplifying diverse projects. And in terms of support over diversity and inclusion, our partners, with HBO, with their APA Visionaries program, Comcast, NBC Universal, there's talent infusion programs there. All these things have been in work in years. It just seems like we're just sort of, again, coming into this point where a lot of it just came out altogether. At organizations like us, like DC, Center for Asian American Media, Pacific Arts Movement, and CAPE, these are folks that are sort of, along with AAJA and everybody else, making things happen and coalescing to just really keep the momentum going. I think it's also a big year. Part of it is the social political climate that we're living in and reflection of who we want to see and be. And I think for us as consumers, we look at the screen as a mirror, and what does it mean when you look into this mirror, you don't see yourselves. And so this is where we're really our as a rising majority is really creating sort of the shift into what we want to be consuming.
Cool, thank you, Francis. So let's switch over to our other expert in the media industry, but in a little bit of a different role, with Telly, who represents the IW group. But so from your perspective, especially as the marketing agency for Crazy Rich Asians, what was, I think I could guess what your highlight or would be for 2018, but I'd love to hear in your words, like, when you think back at the year, what comes to mind, Telly?
I think really just sort of the groundswell of and galvanizing of the community behind Crazy Rich Asians, Searching, and Asian August. I'm old enough to remember Joy Luck Club from 25 years ago, and then before that, like 10 years before that, Last Emperor. And sort of there were these blips on the screen, figuratively and literally, where you thought that the floodgates would suddenly open for Asian Americans. And, Last Emperor came and went, Joy Luck Club, same thing. But really, I think with the confluence of social media and this increased Asian American consciousness, I think you saw people, and also just more Asian Americans in prominent positions who are influencers and tastemakers, who are able to sway a larger audience beyond the community. And I think that's really what contributed to the success of Crazy Rich Asians. But I think that sort of stand up and be seen mentality with the community is really the best, my most surprising and delighted takeaway from 2018.
And so then talking specifically about Crazy Rich Asians, IW Group, played a big role in creating that buzz, right? As we all, and getting the community excited before the release of the movie. But was there a moment, Telly, as you guys were, doing your thing as you normally do, where was there a moment where you thought, oh my gosh, this is actually going to be really big? Like, was there any particular moment of that?
Yeah, there definitely was a trajectory, because when we started the year, we were brought on board. We've been working with Warner Brothers for like close to a decade now. We're their Asian American agency of record. But When we started this campaign, we were very laser focused on making sure that we would get the support of the Asian American community. And then the beginning of this year, we worked with the San Francisco Chinese New Year Parade and had Michelle Yeoh as their very first celebrity grand marshal in the history of the parade. We took advantage and leveraged the Lunar New Year period, Asian American Heritage Month. We were at all the events that we had, including including VC Festival, as well as other Asian American film festivals. But I think what really started to shift the tide was in August. We worked with some very notable Asian American fashion designers like Opening Ceremony, Babel, Philip Lim, and other fashion influencers, and we had a special screening specifically for the fashion community in New York. And the amount of press and social buzz that came out of that screening, that really sort of opened up the film, I think, to a new audience beyond the Asian American community, because these designers, they're celebrities in their own right, and they're also influencers, and their reach goes way beyond just sort of, what we want to consider the Asian American community. And I think that's where people started to see that the film was relevant, or there was some excitement that was beginning to build and grow outside the Asian American community. And this event only helped solidify that. So I would say, in terms of, if you want to identify like a tipping point, I would say I would look to that sort of event in that moment as something that sort of helped the film cross over, and in addition to a couple of other things.
Yeah, we had a screening at AAJA too, and I remember sitting there with a theater full of like a couple hundred Asian American journalists, and that experience was something that everyone just buzzed about and talked about, and it was written about multiple times. And the contrast between that experience and watching it in a different type of theater, that like led to more content about the experience of watching the film. And I think that generating that buzz that you're talking about was really crucial to just getting more and more attention and visibility.
Absolutely.
And now we have Congresswoman Meng.
Hi, everyone. I apologize. I was having some technical difficulties, and I'll figure out why later, but good to join all of you.
Welcome.
Welcome, Congresswoman Meng.
Hi, everyone.
Do you want to give us a brief intro?
Sure. I'm Congresswoman Grace Meng, representing parts of Queens, New York. It's great to be here with all of you. Thanks to Nielsen and to AAJA for all the tremendous work that you do. Thank you to all my fellow panelists. I'm honored to be on this call with all of you. And I think that this is a very exciting time for the API community. Obviously, I am in the world of politics and civic engagement. We are the fastest growing community in this country. And we just want to make sure that we're exercising our voice, utilizing our power. And I, always want to thank Nielsen for providing us for so much important data that we can use talking to people within and beyond the API community. Facts and data are obviously the most convincing things that we can use when we're talking about our issues.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Meng, for joining us. I know your schedule is crazy. We started off. We went round robin, asking everyone what their highlights were for 2018. We have Francis and Telly, who are in the media industry, representing media. We have Andrew, who's from the Boba Guys. He's a co-founder of Bo Guys. And so I'm going to pose this question to you, Congresswoman Meng. Obviously 2018 was a momentous year also in civic engagement and politics. When you see a freshman class of elected officials that is more diverse than ever, what do you attribute that progress to?
Sure. Well, this was truly a very exciting year. We had, I think, over 80 API candidates run office. We had 100 candidates run for state and local office. Our Congressional Asian Caucus has gained 2 new members, TJ Cox and Andy Kim. So we are 20 members. The history of Congress, as you all know, has not always been the diverse Congress. I think in the history of the United States, only 67 women of color in total have ever served in Congress. This year, this cycle, Black Caucus, Hispanic Caucus, and Asian Caucus, we've gained so it's a really exciting time. And I think this is a testament, obviously in full disclosure, I am a Democrat, but this is really to the increasing participation of our community. And it's always wonderful whether I'm in New York in my district or traveling throughout the country, and I get to meet AAPI communities, whether they've been engaged for a long time or whether they're newer Americans, or a lot of our increasing participation from a lot of our young people. We do a lot of work in college campuses as well. And it's incredibly exciting to be able to share a lot of our experiences. You know, we talk about movies like Crazy Rich Asians, and to be able to see the experiences that we lived on the screen or in the media.
I think we're having a little bit hard bad connection, Congresswoman Meng, but thank you. So you know what? Let me as hopefully the connection gets a little bit better. Let's shift over to Andrew. You know, in 2018 was also a great year when it comes to small business owners and entrepreneurs, and really more about Asian influences in the mainstream, particularly when it comes to food and drinks, because we're very serious. We Asians are very serious when it comes to both of those things. And, you know, I'm so happy to see Bubba guys. Really, you guys have been, you're one of the buzzes, right, that we're talking about. And we're so happy to see the success. And you said you opened your 15th store today. So that's really something. But so from your perspective, what was your most memorable moment in 2018?
Yeah, I was thinking this. Thank God I went last, because I'm collecting all the different moments that you guys said throughout this 10 minutes. And I really think it was a little bit of what everybody was saying. We were very fortunate to be in the middle of a lot of them. I think some people might know we were in the article that kind of unveiled that a bunch of us were behind Gold Open. So when Crazy Rich Asians and Asian August happened, there was a small group of us from that dinner with John Chu that started what you call the buyouts for this large national movement that really just, all it was just kindling that was used to light a great product up. I think the product was amazing. I think when I remember one of my favorite moments was we saw an early screening of Crazy Rich Asians in, I think, April. And I think IW Group helped put that together. The after party was crazy. And I think after that moment, I remember crying twice in that movie. And I think I'm admitting that online, but yeah, I cried twice in the movie, once in the beginning and once at the end. And I remember coming after it, and we said, what could the business community do to kind of be a big megaphone? How do we use our resources and pull them together and do something amazing? And I remember in May, I was at the Apex Gala, and that's where I saw Grace. I have a picture with Grace and all these. I saw Colleen, Hanabusa, and all these people on stage. I'm like, wow, this is the face of not just representation in media. This is also the face of representation in politics. And when Asian August hit, it was just a culmination of everything. And I think, you know, for me, it's weird. People always ask us, you know, what happened in food that made it so popular? And why did what happened in food when you had the David Changs, the Eddie Huangs, and the Roy Choi's, why did that happen, 5, 6 years ago? But in media and politics, it kind of came a little after. And I think it was because we had certain pioneers that really represented the community. And there was actually a lot of help too from the outside of the Asians, where in my world, I always felt like it was, and I really look up to him to this day, is Anthony Bourdain or Andrew Zimmern, who was going to Taiwan and talking about content and making it accessible. And that allowed people to feel like they can have sriracha, have, mava tofu, like, or xiaolongbao. That made it very easy. So when it came out in different cultures, you had a way to kind of connect it back to kind of a larger experience, that's American experience. And I think in media, we're able to do that. I think Crazy Rich Asians, a part of the reason it was so accessible was because it was told with a very accessible storytelling and narrative. I think they did, I saw Adele at the Apex Gala. Actually at the Core Gala, I think 2 weeks ago. And we're talking about the dumpling scene that was very famous in the movie for Crazy Rich Asians. And everybody could relate to the Tiger Mom, right? Disapproving mother-in-law or future mother-in-law. And I think that those scenes are what I think made that movie really do so well, not just with Asians, but across the board, like the Black Panther did so well too, or Sorry to Bother You. And I think when you put it all together, I think 2018 was actually the first time in which you just had everybody get along, because Asians are a little bit notorious for infighting sometimes. And I think we were able to not talk about Korean and Japanese and Chinese and Taiwanese and Vietnamese. We're able to kind of come together. And it wasn't just about food. It was food people like us doing media or politics, and politics getting into food. Jose Andres, right? With all the Puerto Rico stuff. And he crossed over in the Hispanic community. And I think you're seeing this new age where I think business, media, and politics all intersect. And I think that's why we all run into each other nowadays.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think it's, I think particularly for the Asian American community, we've gone from self-interest to American interest. Really being much better at supporting each other. But here at Nielsen, when we look at the data, we are also seeing a shift in how all Americans, right, despite your background, how they view diversity, particularly when we talk about millennials, but even more so the Gen Zs, who are growing up with such diverse communities that, they want to experience an ethnic flavors. They want to support businesses that sell sriracha. They want to support, politicians who actually understand their culture. And so, you started, I think Bubba Guy started when, 2011?
Yeah.
Have you seen that kind of change in the reception of what you do from the time you started?
Yeah, I think that's actually a huge difference. I think in the beginning, sriracha is probably a good token example. It's just, there was, in general, I think a lot of ethnic foods were exoticized, or a lot of people Columbus it. I'm not sure if you heard that term, where it's like it existed for centuries in every other culture, except Americans finally discovered it, and now it's a real thing. And I think what we really discovered in the last 5 years since we started is that, I don't know if it's the millennial or Gen Z or Gen Y culture just getting a little more woke about it, is that the appropriation or the origin of something is a lot more important now. I think you just can't just take something from another culture and be a culture vulture. And you're seeing, I think, a huge sentiment, and I think we should give it a hand to the younger generation for catching those nuances and sensitivities, where it's like, you know what, we're not as Eurocentric as we should be. We shouldn't be so Eurocentric. Or every time we discover something, we should give credit to the community that it comes from. And I think that is a huge consumer change. And I'm glad it's happening, because I think it's helping almost every ethnic community do really well. I mean, even in politics, like I think the voices of, Ocasio-Cortez, the fact that she came up, or Beto, like, I think they really tap into this idea that I always tell our team, do you think the world's going to look like the cast of Fast and the Furious and be that world or not? We do. So that globalist, that kind of everybody's in it together mentality is starting to hit politics, is starting to hit food, media, entertainment. And I think there are people fighting against it. I think we're just on that side of history. We're on the side of, I call it the Fast and Furious side of history, where it's everything is more of a blend and a bridge.
Yeah, I think you raised some really great points, and especially touching on the emerging communities and emerging power and potential of our community. And I think one area we've really seen this and hope to see more of it is the power of the AAPI electorate. You may have seen a recent New York Times article, I'm sure the Congresswoman remembers, that Asian Americans are referred to as the sleeping political giant. But, I mean, me as a reporter, just in the 2016 election, I remember doing a story about how Asian Americans are emerging as an electorate. And this is kind of an ongoing story, right? We're now starting to rise and really showing the power of us as a voting bloc. And I want to turn to the Congresswoman just to get your thoughts on this. I mean, we're seeing a growing involvement of AAPIs in the electoral and political process. What can we continue to do to keep that momentum going, and the momentum that we've seen over the past election cycles, and keep that just moving forward?
Sure. I mean, what we've talked about today is sort of a bunch of our experiences growing up or in our various fields, and being able to feel more accepted as our families have been in this country for longer and longer periods of time. However, I think in the past, 2 years, so much has happened within the world of politics and in our world, where I think many APIs, including myself, feel challenged as to what it really means to be American. I know that in a good way, there's always been a challenge as to was I American enough, even though I was born and raised in America. But in recent years, you start thinking, because of current events, I've talked to my kids more than I ever have before, about the Chinese Exclusion Act, about Japanese incarceration camps. And it's because current events almost help give me no choice but to bring up past history and to try to educate them, because of the fear that people have. And whether you're talking about what's been happening with the Muslim community, and in recent days, the Vietnamese American community, there's a lot of real life stories that are causing, I think, AAPIs to become more involved and more engaged.
Yeah, I think you've really touched on something that's really relatable to many minority communities, not just AAPIs. We're seeing just more need to come together and show our power and the voice that we can have as a community, no matter what party you are. Just the fact that you should be exercising your voice if you can vote, or if you can help turn out voters. I think that's a really good potential that we just need to keep building on, especially given that there's going to be such a big election coming up in 2020. So I think that's a good segue for us to really look forward. What I've been hearing so much the past half hour is just so much potential and energy and excitement, and we're hearing like Asian August, the Golden Theater viewing, and more boba opening. There's just a lot of exciting things happening, but how can we make this lasting, right? And what are we excited about for 2019? Because even though we've had all these successes in 2018, that just means that we have so much more that we can accomplish and more visibility that we can achieve as a community in the next year. So how about Frances, why don't we turn to you? What particular events, projects, emerging media projects that are you on the lookout for? What are you most excited about, and what can we in the audience do to help support that happening in 2019?
Well, in a few days we have James Wan's Aquaman that's coming out. Very excited about that, just to support films, from our creative community. Next year I'm just excited. I think just if you look at even the Sundance slate, we have Justin Chan's Miss Purple that's going to be premiering there. Lulu Wang's The Farewell, Minhal Baig's Hala, which is also premiering at Sundance. So these are sort of some of the big things that are coming from this independent filmmaking space that hopefully also gets picked up and gets distribution, really for mainstream audiences. Diane Paragas's Yellow Rose, which stars Ava Noblezada and Lea Salonga, the two Miss Saigons, about a story about an undocumented Filipino American in Texas. I mean, these are sort of, I know Congresswoman alluded to, just not just seeing Asian stories, but seeing American stories about our Asian communities. Really looking forward to that. Even some projects local that we're supporting, Sue Ding, emerging media maker, also is sort of covering, everybody remembers Babysitters Club. There was an Asian American, a character that named Claudia Kishi as well. And so there's just so many things that sort of, I think people are also empowered in seeing the success of this and being inspired. And so for 2019, especially for BC, it's 49 years for us. We're counting down to 50. We have an exhibit as well that's coming out at First Light, which is a founders exhibit, just to talk about our early documentary work in photography and film as well. So there's, we've sort of tracked these the last 50 years, and sort of there is this trajectory or vector that's a sort of progress, but also we want to make sure it's not just going to be cyclical as well. And I think how do we support this is again by our wallets, but saying that we do want this, because if we say we don't want it, then it's not going to come out. So we just got to keep pushing this envelope that we're in.
Yeah, I'm literally taking notes of all the names that you just mentioned that I have not heard of. And I'm going to be listening to this recording again just to get everything.
Okay. We'll talk more.
All right, offline. Well, how about you, Telly? I mean, you're so in the know as well. And you've mentioned Asian August. We've been talking about the Golden Open, opening the wallets. What are you excited about in 2019, and what can we do in the audience, in the community, and organizations like AAJA, companies like Nielsen? How can we help us get there in 2019?
Well, I think speaking from a marketing agency perspective, when it comes to opening up the wallets, and that's what Crazy Rich Asians proved, that you can mobilize this group, you can herd these cats, and they will support something. And so what we're seeing as an agency that specializes in the Asian American market, that a lot of brands, a lot of companies are now very interested in getting into this space, and working with us to really activate in a meaningful and purposeful way. So we're always trying to bring new ideas to our clients when it comes to sort of tapping into emerging subcultures within the Asian American community, and really uplifting a trend or something that we see that could be the next big thing. So next year we're going to be doing a lot in the breakdancing space. And also, we just dipped our toe in the water in the EDM space for McDonald's. We did a 6 a.m. morning rave in LA last week, which there was a line around the block. It was DJ Manila Killa was our guest. So we're seeing just different ways that the Asian American millennials and Gen Z are being representing themselves, and we're seeing people outside of the not so much. I think on the flip side of what's been said before, I don't think non-Asians are supporting these figures because they're Asian. I think they simply don't care what they are as long as they're doing something cool and interesting. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really exciting, and that's what we're looking forward to.
Callie, I'm so excited now. Should I go find my parachute pants for 2019? You bring back breakdancing, I'm going to get so excited.
Yeah, that actually, breakdancing was an official sport at the Youth Olympics this last October in Buenos Aires, and one of the was Asian.
Wow.
Because breakdancing is huge in Japan and Korea and other parts of the world outside the US, and Asians and Asian Americans have really been at the forefront of that space, and that's something that we want to amplify, as well as EDM music and these sort of digital producers that are kind of creating their own music on their computers, uploading them to Bandcamp, and creating a brand for themselves. So there's a lot of emerging trends that we're really trying to look at, because I think you can only go to the well so many times, and there's a lot of water out there. So
cool, excellent. So how about you, Congresswoman Meg? There's a lot of issues, obviously, that everyone should know about, but specifically for the AAPI community, like what are the important issues that we should be paying attention to from your perspective?
Like you said, there are a number of issues. We could probably be here for another hour just going over the substance. For me, as we approach 2020, and honestly, regardless of which party, one of my priorities is to make sure that our community is involved, especially and including states that are important to all of our presidential candidates. We want to make sure that our fast-growing AAPI community is being heard. A challenge for me and many AAPI electeds is always to sort of also bridge the gap generation and the young. There are different techniques and different obstacles in conveying our messages and making sure that they in turn feel like they're being listened to. So whether you're talking about issues like the census, for example, Democrats are in the majority, I think we have a little more leverage to make sure questions such as whether asking people if they're citizens or not are not going to be included in the census. Our community already has a low response rate, and we want to make sure that community is filling out the census to make sure that our communities and our various states are getting the resources that they deserve. And so the census is coming up much so hopefully we can all get the word out on that. I mean, rights is another huge this happened just in recent weeks and months in states like Georgia, for example. In Georgia, there's a growing and they have a role in elections, congressional, gubernatorial. And so not just in Georgia, but around the country, especially in state legislatures, trying to minimize and prevent certain communities. And so as we go into 2020, whether it's these kinds of issues, and of course, immigration and healthcare getting the message out, and that we're being good listeners and good public servants as well.
So definitely, basically a lot of engagement, continue to engage and do our part, all of us, right? Each individual in our community. Andrew, in terms of you, I know you have a lot of interesting projects that are going on. You have that cafe in the San Francisco Asian American Museum. That's so cool. What are you looking forward to for 2019? And are there any projects that you want to share that we can support you as a community?
Yeah, I think the top 3 projects I could think of. Number one is, some people know we have a big media project. We have a book deal. So I think it's with Penguin Random House. We have one of the best editors, Francis Lam. He did Chrissy Teigen's book. He's done, I think, Questlove's book. So to have us, we got a pretty good package. I think we'll be doing a pretty big media tour. And when we talk about our drink, a lot of people are like, well, the top restaurant, even we have restaurants too, but our top restaurant, you have maybe 300, 400 covers a day. That's 400 people coming to the space a day. In Boba Guys, we have over 10 now, maybe 12,000 people coming to a store a day. that's almost 4 million people who wait in our long lines, 35, 40-minute waits. And what do we do with that platform? And so I think the premise of that is, if there was the Asian, I wouldn't say Asian Starbucks, but, I think Panda Express has also done a really good job in food, but we probably are going to go a little deeper in culture and use that platform to tell more and more stories about immigrants. So a lot of the book is about immigration, a lot about what I call the new American dream, where the old American dream was our parents just making sure that, they left wars really, and they left my parents left communist revolutions. So it's not about that. I can't even relate. I want to, but I can't relate to that. But then I think the new American dream is, pursuing what you want to do. And if I just did something really status quo, I think my parents actually, and they have said they would be more upset. They want me to choose what I love. And I'm a little surprised to hear that, but I think that's the reason they left. They left so we can have freedom. And I think that's a huge part of where I think the 2019-20 is going to go. Like right now, you probably created a new generation of filmmakers and artists because of Manila Killer, Pilo, Kehlani, and Steve Aoki, and John Chu, and Aquafina. They created probably just huge wave that we're going to see 5-10 years from now, that they're going to do even crazier things. And I think we're just trying to build that platform. And the big one is actually we made our own boba factory. So that is a big deal because we've talked a lot about Asian America, but we actually have a very unique relationship when I go back to Asia. And that's a huge dynamic, which we sometimes we kind of glossed over, which is what's going to happen when you have the US and Asia kind of having this cultural battle right now with tariffs, or just, China has their own media company. They could care less if they want to make movies for Americans anymore. That's why Crazy Rich, I don't know why it didn't do well in China. And so I think we need to now lay the groundwork in making sure that we can connect different civilizations entirely. And I think for us, we're one of the few. This is why I got involved in politics, is I do a lot of US-China policy, because I do tea trade. And I could tell you how the tea trade, the coffee trade, and plastics and sustainability, which we're known for, the straw ban. We helped write the ordinance on the straw ban, which is another big deal that we're going to do in 2019, where we're going to bring a lot of these alternative materials. Like, Americans don't know much about bamboo, but a lot of our bamboo fiber straws are going to probably revolutionize the fast casual industry. So those things, I would say, come from Asia, and we're trying to make people think about that connection differently. So I think 2019 is, if I were to say something, it's really just emerging of a third culture. So that term is used a lot, but I think there is now going to be a full-on third culture that is different from China, Singapore, Malaysia, Japanese, Korean, and different from American. I think there's this new third culture that's probably like a globalist culture that is going to emerge in 2019 even more than before. My take.
Thank you. And wait, Andrew, before you go, can you share with us the name of your book, or is that still under wraps?
I think we just sent part of the manuscript in, so I don't even know. Right now it's untitled. It's like The Boba Book. We don't even know. We're trying to get I hope the editor doesn't get mad, but we want it to be like a James Beard nominated book about boba, which would be crazy. So our team is the best of the best. We have Lucky Peach. We have all the best writers, and I wrote a large part of it. A lot of stuff that I've been saying is what is been kind of our dialogue about the book.
All right, so we'll help you market the book, but we all get a signed copy.
Please, yeah, New York Times bestseller. We need a gold open for the book too.
And free boba.
Yeah, free boba. Yeah. Thanks.
Well, we're almost out of time, but Mariko, what are you looking most forward to in 2019?
Okay, so 2019 for me is really two things. One is Census 2020. I know Congresswoman Meng mentioned that as well, but 2019 is going to be about Census 2020 for me and for Nielsen to really go out there, use our partnerships, use our connections, and with the community to educate everyone on the impact, why it's so important that we all engage, and why it's crucial that we are represented in the census numbers. So that's number one. I think number two is just, we are working on our consumer report for 2019, and really AAPI continue to sort of pave the way when it comes to digital behavior, whether it's streaming and podcasts and all the digital media platforms, but also on the buy side of how people are buying, what they're expecting for in terms of service and delivery, and then also and in that, wrapped up in that as well, is just what we're seeing here is the rise in the digital voice of Asian Americans, because we're so good at technology. We love it. We and it's a democratized platform. Really, we've really, as a community, have been able to use it to our advantage, and so we continue to see that momentum and trend in our data. But we're going to be coming up with our report officially in April. So look out for that. And in the meantime, for all the journalists who are listening who need data in your stories, feel free. All of the the work that we do for Asian American is free on our website. So feel free to come and download. So how about you, Michelle?
Well, please give us all of the data. We need all of that to report. So, as I start my presidency at AAJA in 2019 for the 2019 and 2020 term, we're really looking at 2020 as our goal for visibility. We're kind of framing it as visibility as 2020. And we have two strategic goals that we're going to be focused on. One is to grow our membership from 1,600 to 2,020 by 2020. And to elevate our most veteran and experienced members so that they could be in the highest ranks of media. And this is important because the number growth it's not just a numerical thing. If we reach 2020 by 2020, that would really take us back to pre-recession levels, which really shows like a resurgence in media in a way that we have not seen in a decade. And there are so many more ways to grow and engage new members who are not just in traditional media anymore. You don't have to be like a mainstream journalist to be in journalism. There are so many new storytellers out there, people telling their own stories on YouTube and on social media that we can engage in the new face of journalism. And the importance of making sure that we have visibility at the highest levels of media companies is that right now media is still run by, major media companies are still run by mostly white men. So who are the new Jeff Zuckers? Who are the new Marty Barons who are not white men, who can bring diversity and a really robust diversity of experiences to the highest levels of journalism? And in order to get there, we have to be able to train the right journalists, to elevate the right journalists, to recruit the right people for those big marquee jobs. And another thing I'm excited about is that there are some big name Asian American journalists who are really getting ready for 2020, who we can elevate. People like AAJA Jang at CBS, who's a White House correspondent, Sungmin Kim at Washington Post, also a White House correspondent, Richard Louie at MSNBC, Lane Kiano at CBS. There's so many emerging talent, rising talent that we could feature in 2019 and 2020. So I'm really excited to reach new levels of visibility.
That sounds fantastic. All right, I think we're coming up until the end. But I wanted to really thank every one of you for joining us today. So appreciative. I know time is so crucial, especially in the holiday times. I know for those of you on the East Coast, it's like 8 o'clock. So I really appreciate you, appreciate your time, and really cheers for the amazing year we had, but even more for to continue the momentum and support one another and help one another and really come together for 2019. So have a wonderful holiday for everyone also who are tuning in. Have a wonderful holiday season, and happy New Year.
Happy holidays.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.